Hello and welcome to Unstress. I'm Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Now here we are. We've got quite a few episodes under our belt, over 25 I think it is, and if you've just joined us and cast your eye down the list all the way to episode 1, the mission statement, which actually explains it all, you will see we've covered a fairly broad range of topics. Now, for those who don't know, I am a holistic dentist, so it's appropriate to cover things to do with oral health. This episode will be of interest to anyone with a mouth who is interested in their health and hasn't fully connected the two. If you're not taking oral health seriously, you should, because your body already does. Now, we're not going to be talking about brushing and flossing, although it does behove me to say, and I would be irresponsible as a dentist if I didn't, it's important. So there it is, I've said it. My guest today is dentist Dr. Stephen Lin. Stephen has written a fabulous book, and the title says so much. It's called The Dental Diet: The Surprising Link Between Your Teeth, Real Food, and Life-Changing Natural Health. This is about so much: your digestive system, your respiratory system, your ability to breathe and sleep well, your posture. It's about ancient wisdom, and as you will hear, it is not just about how and what to do, but why. I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with Dr. Stephen Lin. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hey, Ron, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Stephen, you and I are both dentists, so the health of the mouth doesn't come as a huge surprise to us, but to the majority of people it does, and there's a certain truth in our teeth. Why does the mouth matter so much?
Yeah, I think you're right, Ron. And, we've really witnessed this, in our practice and our profession, kind of sees it broadly in society is that we really kind of placate the mouth as being an area that we go and get fixed up if there's a problem. And so I really think that people have this misunderstanding is that there's actually very powerful messages in their teeth and their gums, the way their jaws develop even, that we can actually be understanding simply by viewing the mouth not as something we go to fix at the dentist, but we understand as a part of the body and as a physiological messenger. And really, I think that the food is the powerful way to control these messages and understand how the oral systemic connection is far more powerful than we ever really even imagined.
Well, music to my ears, Stephen, of course, and we're going to go into the diet, but what sort of things are going on in the mouth for our listeners?
Yeah, so I think many people, we really kind of look very superficially at the mouth, and even dentists, might be a little bit guilty of this as well. As we kind of look at teeth and that's all, but there's a lot going on in the mouth that really tell us very, very deep and fundamental processes in the body. And one big aspect that I think that we miss is breathing. And you really kind of talk about this a lot, and I think your book's such a great resource for that. But breathing, we can find the signs of improper breathing. And one way that I try and tell my patients about this is that, if you think about feeding yourself, oxygen is the number one nutrient. So if we see that and we see the mouth as this messenger for how we're taking oxygen in, all of a sudden we can begin to see some very simple signs that we're not breathing right. One might be teeth grinding. One might be biting the tongue. One might be mouth breathing or a dry mouth, or waking up in the morning, for instance, feeling a bit not refreshed because we haven't had a good night's sleep. And that can all be connected to not breathing right. And the mouth is usually one of the first points that we start to see the sign points of this.
Yes, I know people don't make that association, but the shape of the mouth's a really important factor, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And size. And this is where size does matter.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. Yeah, but that's right. So there are ways, for instance, and this is especially important in parents, but also in adults as well, to understand, how your jaw has developed. So anthropologically, I think, if you look at the records, we are designed to have 32 human teeth. And so if we don't fit those teeth naturally, that's a sign of jaw growth inadequacy. So that means that your upper and lower jaw haven't grown enough to fit those teeth. That's a signpost of the body not having the correct nutrients and messages to grow properly during childhood. But then what we're talking about there is in terms of the architecture of the airway. All of a sudden, we can look into someone's mouth and look at their palate, and we can look at their adenoids and tonsils. We can see the tonsils in the back of the throat. And so if we see airways that are constricted, if we see structures and craniofacial structures that haven't quite developed, or postures, a forward-tipping head, for instance, in a narrow-faced individual indicates that they're, for the most part, be mouth breathing by habit. So all of these signs come up in the body, and it's a sign of development, but also a sign of nourishment as well. And so we actually know now that we can intervene in these processes in some ways. One, by function, so how the tongue works, how we breathe through our nose, how the lips work. We can intervene in how we operate this very important system, which is the mouth.
Because a lot of people just think, oh, I inherited my mother's teeth and my father's jaws, or vice versa, and that's why my teeth are crowded. But it's a lot more complicated than that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where I really try and take people to an anthropological approach, where we look at our ancestors and the scope of which crooked teeth and dental disease as a whole actually have existed in our society and our human ancestors. And really what an eye-opening moment for myself was to look at the anthropological studies, talk to the anthropologists, and they laugh at you when you ask them about dental diseases in our ancestors. It just didn't happen. And there were 2 points that they find that really kind of changed the shape of our mouth. That was the agricultural revolution, where tooth decay began to pop up in more of its modern forms. But then the industrial revolution was when we began to see the modern jaw and the modern mouth that walks into our dental practice today, with the rates of tooth decay, gum disease, but also malocclusion and crooked teeth. And that's a conversation I don't think we're having enough in society, is that malocclusion really is an issue of development, and that we can intervene in this process now. And that really at the underpinning, when we changed our food, our jaws stopped growing and our teeth stopped fitting as a result.
Yeah, it's a funny thing that we've just come to accept as okay. I mean, I often draw the analogy, if we didn't have enough room on our hands for all 5 fingers, and we all agreed at the age of 21 that we just remove the 4th finger because it wasn't really doing very much, I doubt whether we'd all be going, yeah, that's cool, I'll have my 4th finger. You had your 4th finger removed? Yeah, I did too. But we just accept it. But I know you got very excited, as I did too, about a fellow by the name of Weston A. Price. Tell our listener a little bit about Weston A. Price and why that was so significant, who he was.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually discovered his book whilst I was backpacking through Europe, and I was taking a little bit of time away from dentistry. I was a little bit, you might say, disillusioned with working as a dentist, because it was so reactionary and so treatment focused. And so I was in a hostel in Turkey, in Istanbul, and there was a shared reading shelf, and I actually saw a book named Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by a guy named Weston A. Price, who lived in the early 1900s and practiced in Ohio, Cleveland. He had this theory that the diseases he saw in his patients' mouths was connected to food, and he went on a worldwide journey to discover why and whether there was any truth to this. And so he looked at societies all around the world, both westernized, non-westernized, but where the modern diet intercepts the traditional diet. So where people were living on means they had for thousands of years, and what happens once we bring in modern means. And so he would look at their dental health, he would look at their traditional diets, he would look at what happens to their dental health once they eat these modern diets. And he also looked through their ancestors as well. So he looked through the jaw records and give them a dental checkup as well. And so what he really put together was a human study of proportions I really don't think we've reached, since. I think it's one of the most important health book studies, whatever you want to call it, ever written, because of the scope of what he was measuring. And, it's a very, very unique signpost in time. And the theory he had really came long before many of the chronic diseases we're seeing today. The rates of malocclusion orthodontic braces, for instance, the kids have today. Type 2 diabetes didn't barely exist in his patients. He was talking about tuberculosis. So he really didn't see how the chronic disease epidemic would play out, but he predicted it. So this is how powerful it was. And when I picked that book up, I actually didn't understand it, and I realized that I didn't understand it. And that was the point. To me, I felt that there was a story here that needed to be told. There are messages in food that we need to understand affect our teeth, and that this guy was onto something that for some reason we've all lost.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think it is one of the most important bits of research that has ever been done, because he also got a chance to compare the same genetic group to the people who had moved down the road into towns and cities. So he kind of controlled for the genetic variation and saw what was happening just by dietary changes. And it wasn't very pretty, was it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing, how much he did take into account. And the genetic argument as well also goes across, because he went to 14 different cultures. So, there were kind of two prongs to that too. And it was just remarkable how simple and how, swiftly his observations came forth. And so he took 15,000 photographs, which at the time was remarkable too, because,
he didn't have an iPhone. He didn't have an iPhone, did he?
Exactly. It was beyond anything that was recorded of its time. And today, even though it's in black and white, it is a powerful piece. And anyone that hasn't heard of it, you can kind of Google the images, and you'll see these black and white images of these people's face, and you'll see these lovely broad cheekbones and jawbones, and you got them to open up their mouth, and you'll see this huge gaping dental arch with wisdom teeth standing with plenty of space and no tooth decay. And I remember seeing those photographs and thinking, I don't see that in dental practice anymore today. I don't see dental arches. I don't see teeth of that caliber anymore. And, this is what he was recording. He was recording how human health is in its ancestral form and how we've really kind of moved away from that.
What do you think the percentage is of people, like you say, we don't see people with all 32 of their teeth beautifully aligned with plenty of room for wisdom teeth. What percentage of people in our modern world do have that? Or the alternative, of course, is who don't have that. How many people have crowded mouths?
So from the generations, people, for instance, born in the mid-20th century, I would probably estimate the people coming in from if they grew up in a rural means, I would say probably 20%, have that full 32 tooth arch. But then later, as we get on, from people born from the 80s on, I've barely seen 5 people that the kids that have grown up in that time that have the full wisdom teeth.
We're not talking 5%, we're talking 5 people.
Exactly. So I can barely remember people, and there's a couple of my friends that stick out that do, and I was surprised at seeing them because it just doesn't happen. And we are talking about a very, very low percentage of people. It's hard. You're probably around 1, probably under.
Yes, yeah. Look, it's incredible, isn't it? And I mean, I was born in the 50s, and I can tell you I had my wisdom teeth out, and also I have a little bit of lower crowding of teeth. So I think that is a very, very high number. I agree with you. I think it's that. But I'm going to get on with the diet, but I thought you said something there that was really interesting, that you were a dentist and you were kind of feeling disillusioned because of the way you saw practice going. How would you characterise the way dentistry is practiced today, and how would you like to see that changed?
Yeah, so what we're taught in dental school and, what we see, in terms of what patients come to a dental practice for, it's treating disease. So we have great tools to diagnose, to give a set of treatment options, and then basically cover over a disease. And so what I found when people would ask me questions about why conditions would happen is that I didn't have the answers. So dentists and dental practice have the how and the what. How do we fix this, and what treatment can we overlay to execute this? But we don't have the why it's happening in the first place. And that's the really important part with health, because if we don't get to the why the condition is happening, then it keeps going on. We can put all the lovely crowns and veneers and all the lovely dental work that dentistry has today, but we can't understand the conditions. And so that's where I felt that we were really missing a big part of how the body works, but also practice itself as well. Is that why aren't patients coming to a dental practice to improve their dental health instead of just fixing disease? And so that includes not coming when there's just a disease presence, but coming, for instance, for food information, for breathing information, for sleep information. And, you've really been, in this area and obviously practicing this and teaching dentists this for a long time now, but we are very reactionary creatures, unfortunately, that are missing a big piece of our patient's physiological puzzle. And so I think that's really played out now. The great part of this book writing process is that I found, so many practitioners around the world, and we're talking about functional medicine in all different areas, that have kind of dug into their own speciality and really kind of understood the processes a lot better. And I think dentistry really has one of the big missing links in understanding the whole body, and that we're hopefully on the movement to a powerful, much more holistic healthcare model.
You use the word functional medicine, and I know what it means, but could you just, for our listeners' sake, just, because they may not be as familiar with this term as they should or will be, functional medicine?
Sure. The functional medicine movement or term is quite a broad term, but basically what it means, and it's based, it was based very much in the US, but it has spread. There's some practitioners and schools here in Australia and the UK as well. But basically what it means is that the principles of whether it's a general practitioner or whether it's a chiropractor, or whether it's a health practitioner, they are understanding the root cause of disease, and they're addressing those root causes through measurement techniques and through preventative techniques rather than simply treating it. And so the basic premise is that modern medicine, as modern dentistry, really has this set of tools to treat diseases, and that's how we address them solely. And so functional medicine is that arm that is moving to better testing, better understanding of nutrition, better understanding of lifestyle, breathing, stresses, sleep, and how all of these systems come together, and how we can measure the body in much more detailed ways to give better outcomes for patients. And so that's, I think, been quite disconnected from the dental industry. I think now we have these two burgeoning fields where dentistry can really add to this, because the mouth, as we started off with, is such a powerful signpost and measuring point for the body.
That's a great description of it, Stephen. People have heard a lot about the gut microbiome. They kind of think, we're learning that it's the digestive system's really important. It's where all the immune. A lot of people don't realise that the digestive system starts in the mouth. What makes a healthy oral microbiome?
Yeah, this is because this is one of the most exciting areas of medicine, and functional medicine in particular, is that the discovery, this is 10 years ago now, that trillions of bacteria live in the body. And, that wasn't something that we were really aware of before that. This is a very new perspective, but what it's subsequently shown is that the gut and the digestive system really is the center of many of the processes, and especially the chronic diseases that we see now, often underpinned by dysfunction in the gut. And for anyone that's listened to any kind of health show or read any kind of health information, they've probably heard about how the gut is so important, and the different applications of microbes. But as you say, Ron, the mouth is also a teeming environment of bacteria called the oral microbiome, and it really is crucial. It's a crucial communicator to the gut microbiome. And in the research, the oral microbiome is much less explored in terms of when you compare the amount of papers to the gut microbiome. But it's so powerful, and it's so easy to measure as well, which is really, I hope, where these kind of conversations go, as to understanding that, dentists, we've been dealing with the oral microbiome, for as long as, we've been dentists, haven't we? We're up to our wrists in it as such.
It used to, it started off being called, it's not exactly the same thing necessarily, but the dental plaque. People are familiar with plaque. What's the difference between dental plaque and microbiome? Apart from the way they're spelt, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So, dentists have been talking about bacterial diseases for decades and decades now. So we've known this. And so dental plaque, we know bacteria, for instance, are responsible for conditions like tooth decay. And we've kind of moved from the idea of dental plaque to the idea of biofilm. That's actually something that's set in conventional teaching now, is that students today learn that plaque is biofilm. And that implies that there's a living organism at play, and that there are actually thousands upon thousands of microbes present in the plaque. So we've kind of moved in a way to understanding the ecological nature of dental plaque. And I think the next step is to connect that now as a system to the gut microbiome and understand that it's all actually connecting. And some really interesting studies coming out in these areas. For instance, there was one last year. They said that if you use daily mouthwash, there was a certain subset of people that increased their risk of pre-diabetes. And so now what we know about type 2 diabetes and the gut microbiome, we can potentially start to see that reducing diversity in the mouth might contribute to a gut microbiome that predisposes us to type 2 diabetes. So this is kind of painting out. It's very unfortunately disconnected, but we need to see the mouth as the living and breathing part of our microbiome that we can touch and feel.
Yeah, I think, using that word that you've just used there, diversity, is really the key, isn't it? Because when we were studying dentistry, and I think when you look at papers up to, even a few years ago, there might be listed 2, 5, 10 different microorganisms that are considered to be virulent and cause problems. But now I think we're up to, well, it depends which paper you read. I read one paper which said there are 700 different varieties of microbes in our mouth, and I read another one that said 1,400. Anyway, suffice to say there's a lot, and the diversity of it is the key. It's when you lose that diversity, like you want to have a really big spread of microbes, isn't it? That diversity is the key.
Absolutely, and that's really what the research just shows, that people that lived without chronic disease, they have much more diversity in their gut microbiome. But the same is true for anthropological studies of dental plaques as well. So when you dig up a jaw of a hunter-gatherer, for instance, and you scrape their plaque off, the researchers have showed that they have a much more diverse oral microbiome. And this correlates to the patterns of where they don't experience dental disease. And so that's very much the overriding conclusion, because the microbiome and all of this research is very complex. And as you say, we're kind of going from day to day discovering other things. And, we haven't even got into categories of, types of microbes like archaea and what, certain fungi or viruses do in the oral microbiome either. So I really think, as you say, that we really should be understanding that natural diversity is the best model that we have to promote health, and that goes for the gut microbiome as well. And the mouth is a contributor to how diverse your gut microbiome is as a result as well.
So, Stephen, you've written a terrific book, The Dental Diet, and so I guess this is a good point at which to say, we're trying to promote a diverse, well-balanced, healthy microbiome. What are the fundamentals of a good dental diet for more than just the mouth?
Yeah, so I try and underpin the dietary principles in 4 different principles. And so the first is that there's a physical chewing component to food, and that includes breathing. And so that the mouth and the jaw joint is like a musculoskeletal system, and that it needs to be exercised. So when you go to the gym, when you do a workout, you are training your joints to grow and to be healthy via physical signals. The same goes for our mouth, and so pureeing foods and mush foods and juices really aren't the way we're designed to use our jaw, and that chewing and on fibrous and collagenous foods really is a nutrient in itself. And so that's kind of setting that physical function, and breathing is really important. I try and get people to breathe before sitting down to a meal to get their digestive system working, but also to learn that nasal breathing that our craniofacial system is designed to do. But then, so the nutrients, what Price found was that there were 3 key nutrients that were across the board focused on by cultures all over the world. So these are the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin K2, which people might be a bit less familiar with. But these foods come in whole fat, nutrient-dense foods such as egg yolks and well-sourced butter and ghee and organ meats. And so the different cuts of well-sourced animal that are raised on grass from natural processes, these are the foods that have vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin K2. And if you're not thinking about these three nutrients, I can almost guarantee you're not getting them because...
Nicely put, Stephen.
Exactly, because unfortunately the modern diet strips these nutrients out. And so if you low fat, by definition, will take away your ability to both absorb fat-soluble nutrients, but you likely won't be eating foods that has them in them. So this set of foods really has kind of moved us away. And then on top of that, we need to be thinking about all those trillions of microbes in the mouth and digestive system. So the fibers, the fermented foods, the prebiotic fibers that actually feed bacteria and that our body don't process ourselves, but actually spark off physiological processes that microbes do. So microbes will release molecules when you feed them fiber. And so that's a part of nourishing yourself, but you need to, for instance, make sure you're eating enough of these fibers and replenishing these probiotic communities so that it stays healthy and balanced. And then the last is in epigenetics, and so how your food is sourced, where the food comes from, its lifetime affects how it will send its messages to your own body, and to your own genes are basically listening to every meal. And so that's why organic, well-sourced, grass-raised food and without chemicals is important too. So I try and build it into those four principles, but food becomes a lot more simple when you think of it from the perspective of the mouth, rather than thinking about your waistline or your blood sugar or things like that. So I hope that it helps people to reframe, how they look at the plate in front of them.
Yeah, that's terrific. Just before, go back to K2, because I don't think a lot of people will have heard of that vitamin. A and D, I think they're familiar with, and they, will tell us about those. But K2 is really these fat-soluble vitamins, and as you say, particularly on a low-fat diet, we've really suffered. Tell us about K2.
Yeah, so vitamin K2 was actually the central piece in the mystery that kind of lasted about 70 years. And so Price actually wrote in his book, and so when I was reading Price's book, he was writing, well, there's these three nutrients that people eat and they have healthy jaws, teeth, and they don't need braces or fillings or get any of the conditions we see today. And that was vitamin A, vitamin D, and activated X. And so Price actually died 10 years after he published Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. He never found out what activated X was. And so up until this day, the book was lost basically after he died for about 60 years until around 2000. It was reprinted, but it was still unknown what activated X was for about 10 years until about 2007, when a guy named Chris Masterjohn actually kind of put it together with some Japanese research and some Eastern European, very complex chemistry that kind of uncovered. And that's why it was so hidden, is that the research was more or less hidden from the broader health community. But they showed that it was actually a different type of vitamin K. So that in medical and dental school, we're told that vitamin K is a blood clotting nutrient and the molecule is a phylloquinone. But there is a whole other subset of vitamin Ks, and this is vitamin K2s, and these are called the menaquinones. And so these have very different roles in the body. They actually carry calcium, or they activate the proteins that carry calcium into bones and teeth, but also out of our soft tissues. And the studies have shown that a potential consequence of not having enough vitamin K2 is the increased cardiovascular risk because of the calcification of our arteries. We've really kind of misunderstood this fat-soluble nutrient. It's exactly like A and D in that it needs to be sourced well. How Price noticed it was that he would, in the Swiss Lostrigel Valley, they would actually take the cows up onto the side of the mountain where the fast spring-growing grass would grow, and they would make sure the cow would eat that green grass because it was rich in K1, and then their butter would subsequently be rich in K2. And so that's the same for the butter that we have on supermarket shelves today. If the cow is not grass-raised, it will not have access to that K1-rich grass, and it will not have K2 in it. Whereas if you have organic grass-raised butter, there will be some amount of K2 in it at least. And so K2 has really been misunderstood, but the physiology behind it now is it's showing how powerful it is, and that it's a synergistic factor with A and D. A synthetic form of K2 is approved by the Japanese Health Ministry as a medication or a treatment for osteoporosis. And the reason is because it's so crucial in calcium metabolism. This is exactly what Price was talking about, yet we've ignored and lost and somewhat misunderstood the message. So I think that's really where the powerful message that comes through is that there was a missing piece of his puzzle that we've only just recently understood. So now we have the full picture. We've got the scientific context to put it all together, and that it's time to move forward with what he found out 70 years ago.
Yeah. Now, listen, if people kind of saying, yeah, I get it, I really want it, well, what would be 2, 3, 4, 5 tips you'd give people to get going on this?
Yeah, so the first I would say is that I would try a nasal breathing exercise once a day. And so what that is with your tongue to the roof of the palate, with your lips closed, breathing slowly into the diaphragm, and then having a longer breath out than your breath in. Try that before a meal. Do it, say, for about a minute, and then see how you feel and see whether you feel better while you're eating. This is important for kids. It's important to start getting yourself accustomed to nasal breathing. But then you want to dive into whole fat, well-sourced, nutrient-dense foods, and these are well-sourced eggs, butter. Don't fear the butter. Do not put margarine on your toast anymore. But also the same thing with that is avoid the vegetable oils. And so canola oils, sunflower oils, soybean oils, all of these do not allow your body to absorb these fat-soluble nutrients. So having these nutrient-dense also cuts of animal meats as well, so organ meats. Like, I really try and get my patients to have a slice of liver a week. Everyone kind of cringes, but I did put some recipes in the book to kind of try and hide that. So, pate is really easy to make at home if you like that kind of cold spread, but also in meatballs and kind of a bolognese mince, you can hide it. But there's so many nutrients in these organ meats that are really crucial and they're hard to get from other foods. And like we said before, if you're not thinking about them, you just miss out on them. Mm-hmm. Fermented foods, so if you can incorporate a sauerkraut or some kind of pickled ginger or vegetable into your daily routine, that replenishes those probiotic cultures, all that microbiome we spoke of. We see probiotics on the shelf, but really food, there are so many more microbes in a fermented food than we'll probably ever discover. So probiotic food, lots of fiber. And then the last is really try and get to a farmer's market where you meet where your food's coming from. Talk to them about how the food's raised, what they use to spray the foods, or how the animals kind of graze. Understand a little bit about where your food comes from, where you can, and so that helps you to at least have some context as to how that food has reached your plate and what it's also sending into your body as well.
That's great, Stephen. I think they're terrific tips. And listen, before we go, I wanted to ask you this, taking a step back from the dental diet and just looking at what you've seen in terms of the health out there of people, what do you think the biggest challenge is for people on their health journey today in our modern world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually think one of the biggest challenges is wading through, because there's so much information out there now, and that people that are health conscious, understanding all of the different books out there, all of the different, kind of health experts and programs out there, it really is quite overwhelming as to, how we kind of approach our health. One thing I really try and contextualize for people is that, and I hope that this kind of talk has helped them too, is that dental health really does simplify it all. And so there's so many different complex ways to approach overall healthier lifestyle, but your teeth, your mouth, the principles that you use to keep your dental health tip top really do reverberate throughout the body. And that context, I hope, helps simplify this, because I just think there's so much information out there that most people are just kind of freezing and giving up because they simply can't keep up with it all. And so I hope that the dental practitioners and this message of oral health can help them kind of simplify it all and bring it all under one hat of, we're working with the same body here, and that the principles of the mouth really are there for us to see in plain daylight.
Stephen, what a great note to finish on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ron. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for all your work too, actually, that has just been so helpful for this movement. I'm looking forward to chatting more.
I really enjoyed talking to Stephen, and his passion for getting this message out, well, obviously I share that passion. I love the term functional dentistry. I mean, I like holistic too, because that's the way our bodies work. It's the way our planet works. So I really like the idea of thinking holistically. But understanding how it functions and using that to inform our practice, our professional practice, is certainly shaping medicine in the form of functional medicine, and exercise or movement in the form of functional movements. So functional dentistry, well, I think it's a move in the right direction. Diversity is another important term. Diversity in the food we eat, natural foods, leads to a diverse and a stable microbiome, not just in the gut, but in the mouth as well. And the question we all need to be asking ourselves each and every day, are we feeding our friends or our foes? That's the bacteria that we share our bodies with. The other thing I loved in what Stephen said when he was outlining his 4 principles was principle 1. Before you start, practice nasal breathing. I love that idea. Not only do you need to do that to keep your mouth shut while you chew effectively, because there's nothing more disgusting than an open mouth when you're trying to gasp for breath and chew at the same time, but nasal breathing also helps you engage the parasympathetic nervous system, or the rest and digest. So a great way to start the meal. I really thought that was terrific. Look, we'll have transcripts, we'll have links to Stephen's website and book. I hope you enjoyed it. So until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Be well. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express